name is Dolores Berg, and this is Novel Weekly. Today we have a very special guest, English author Clive Barker. And to welcome our special guest, everyone in the audience will be receiving his first edition book of The Damnation Game. Hello, Mr. Barker. How are you today?
Very well, thank you.
So, as you can see, Clive, our entire audience is filled with your hard die fans, and they'll be asking you questions later on in the episode.
Sounds exciting.
So, to start off, can you give me a brief summary of your first work, The Damnation Game?
Yeah, of course. It starts off in the recovery of World War II in the...
Take 3. Hello everyone, my name is Dolores Berg, and this is Novel Weekly. Today we have a very special guest, English author Clive Barker. And to welcome our special guest, everyone in the audience will be receiving his first edition of The Damnation Game. Welcome, Mr. Barker. How are you today?
Very well, thank you.
So as you can see, Clive, everyone in the audience, diehard fans of yours, and we'll be having a questioning period later on in the episode.
Sounds exciting.
So to start off with, could you give me a brief summary of your first publication, The Damnation Game?
Yeah, of course. It starts off in the recovery period of World War II in Warsaw, Germany, in the aspect of a thief rummaging around through people's houses trying to make a fortune off the jewelry and whatnot. He later hears about a myth of a man who gambles for very high stakes and never loses at cards. This intrigues the thief greatly, and he spends fortunes and all of his time trying to track down this man. But the man led him into this and used his curiosity to lead him into hell and tricked him and began some maniacal work. From there we are transported to the 1980s in England, and we are in a prison. The main character now is Marty Strauss, and he has been given a special parole as a bodyguard for Whitehead. He is a multi-millionaire for a pharmaceutical company. I wanted to do this because after Warsaw, it looked like hell, and I wanted to symbolize hell because the theme is about the afterlife. But I wanted the mansion to represent heaven, and because of all the bountifulness and everything it could offer, and there's so many twists and turns with the characters, it's really fast-paced, and I really am proud of what I did.
Sounds very interesting. So does this tie into the defining theme at all, or what's the main theme of this novel?
Yeah, it does. I tried to make the main theme very spiritual and very promising for someone who's very open-minded. I made the theme about not being able to escape death, no matter who we are, what we own, what race we are, what religion we are. It doesn't matter in the end. A lot of the characters tried to escape death, especially the antagonist and the protagonist for that matter. One of them tried to use all of his wealth, the multimillionaire I just mentioned earlier, to escape death, but it led to an even quicker downfall, ironically, that you will find out in the book. That's why I created the imagery of heaven and hell from both settings in the beginning and throughout the novel.
That sounds very interesting, Clive. We'll be right back after this commercial break. Could you tell us some of the symbols that are in the book? And if so, do they relate or tie into the theme at all?
Yeah. Some of the symbols I included were objects or instruments of death. One of the characters, for example, used a noose to commit suicide. Another one of the characters was a murderer and used a knife to butcher people. I mean, on instinct, we all associate death with things like that. Another example would be the locations. The war mentioned was like hell, as I said, and the mansion represented with all its bountifulness heaven. So those are another example of the afterlife. And one that kind of strays away to more of a sub-theme would be all of the characters kind of had ways to escape reality, as if they didn't want to be a part of it or they weren't happy with their lives. Marty gambled excessively, and whenever he won, he got this insatiable high that couldn't be compared with anything. And the millionaire's daughter, she is a heroin addict, and she goes into this world that she just feels completely part of and surrounded by. And then there's Whitehead, the millionaire, who uses his vast wealth to create and get anything he wants and to provide all the comforts in the world.
Well, songs are very interesting and complex. So could you tell me what's your inspiration just for writing horror stories?
Well, ever since I was little, I was always into slasher films and horror comics and books and movies and action figures, everything I could get my hands on that had to do with something abnormal or shocking. One instance I remember from my childhood was at camp. I was not the best, not tire or fisherman or tent pitcher, but when everything settled down and the night had come and we all gathered around the fire and told stories, I had the best ghost story, and I was the person who made people feel afraid, and I was just really proud of that as a child.
Well, it sounds like we'll have to get together and have a campfire of our own. So, before we go to another break, I know you're into plays. So, do you find that your book relates to Macbeth at all? Written by the late Shakespeare, of course.
Yes, that's a very odd question, but I do find some resemblance now that I think about it. Whitehead, the wealthy businessman, and Macbeth do have very much some similarities. They're both, in a way, governed by women in their life. Macbeth, of course, to Lady Macbeth, and Whitehead to his daughter Carys, who grew further apart from him after their mother's death, and he's trying to reunite his love with him by feeding her heroin, essentially, because it makes her happy, and he feels like he is doing a good job as a parent. But they do differ, for that matter, in a way, because Macbeth is trying to establish his manhood to his wife, and Whitehead is trying to reincarnate his love for his daughter, which is very different, and I guess that does create a difference for the characters. Another similarity is that they were both put into situations that they tried to fight against, but it seemed like fate was intervening, and they couldn't escape it, as Macbeth was given these prophecies and led to his downfall. Whitehead was given somewhat of prophecies throughout the duration of the novel, and it led to his downfall in the end, and you see that as the book goes on. Finally, they both dealt with supernatural forces, Macbeth with the witches, and Whitehead with his enemy, who is very powerful and uses knowledge from forgotten times to help defeat him. And I found that, actually, now that I think about it, I find that's a very odd connection.
Well, that's a very in-depth connection between the two novels. But, of course, we have to go to break, so we'll be right back.